Too often, great non-binary figures in history have been neglected, like Georges Sand, who was a brilliant author. Many know Victor Hugo and Honoré de Balzac, but Georges Sand was already more famous than these two authors combined at the age 27. And this in 19th century Europe, where antiquated gender roles were hardly questioned. She was an elemental power. She did nothing just a little bit, but everything always with the force of her whole personality and conviction. She led a free and unconventional life which polarized her contemporaries. Nietzsche, for example, called her a riding cow who had something bad about her in the German sense. I have no idea what that is, but it sounds mean. And Charles Baudelaire called her stupid, heavy, and garrulous. The fact that there are men who could become enamored of this slut is indeed a proof of the abasement of the men of this generation. Man, those two really need to learn how to insult. That's so stupid. But this self-confident and independent author also had many fans. André Maurois wrote about her that she was the voice of women in a time when women were silent. And Victor Hugo admitted that he cried like a child when she died. And Balzac, Dostoevsky, and among others, Walt Whitman immortalized her in their works.
George Sand is a woman?
Yes.
Wow, okay, cool.
But who was Georges Sand and how did she manage to divide minds so much? She was born in Paris in 1804 with the name Aurore Dupin. Actually, the name is much longer and sounds pretty much aristocratic, but we don't have time for that. Her mother left her early and her father died when she was 4 from a riding accident. She grew up with her grandmother, who taught her aristocrat etiquette but was also influenced by the Enlightenment thinkers like Rousseau. The young Aurore internalized the values of them and used her own mind early on, sapere aude, until she had reached a level of education that was unusual for the time and even more so for a young woman. Her first husband could not keep up with his wife's thirst for knowledge. He did not share her love for the world of books, music, and philosophy. Instead, he went on the prowl, on drinking binges, and soon had affairs. He was a fuckboy and party guy. The marriage failed accordingly. Fortunately, Aurore found a talented lawyer for the divorce, so that the wealthy woman did not have to leave her possessions and children to the penniless officer. She was not to remarry, but the list of her lovers is long and full of celebrities, such as Alfred de Musset, Frédéric Chopin, and the actress Marie Dorval. Rather unusually for the time, she was open about her affairs and made no secret of them. After the divorce, she began writing for Le Figaro and her own books. She became a workaholic and published under the male pseudonym Georges Sand. Her lover, Musset, wrote about her, "I worked all day. In the evening, I had made 10 verses and drunk a bottle of brandy. She had drunk a liter of milk and written half a book. This milk must have kicked in pretty good." She was addicted to coffee and cigars and preferred to work at night. Here she was undisturbed and felt most creative. Sounds like a vampire. With the male first name, she wanted to gain easier access to the male-dominated and defined domain. From then on, she also changed her habitus and wore a suit and top hat in public. The reason? It's simply more practical. Trousers have pockets. With this, she caused a stir in Paris, where at that time one actually needed a permit to cross-dress. Georges Sand was taken seriously as a male author and rapidly conquered the literary stage. A critic of her first novel, Indiana, remarked that this author was very much empathetic to the sufferings in the world, and such empathy was not displayed by a Balzac or any other of her fellow male writers. So that's the reason why it was soon revealed that Georges Sand was a woman, because of her empathy. Furthermore, she was able to make that genderqueer uniqueness her trademark. For her, it was natural throughout her life to blur the boundaries between female and male. So she often spoke about herself in the grammatically masculine form, but not always. A contemporary referring to her and her lover Chopin described the unequal couple as follows: "He is so ladylike and she is a complete gentleman." She was a border crosser of the sexes, sometimes woman, sometimes man. In her works you find this again. She deconstructs the classical antagonisms perceived as opposites like male, female, by inventing characters who are one and the other or neither. She wrote Indiana in 2 months, followed by 180 more volumes published in her lifetime, as well as numerous socially critical articles for magazines and about 40,000 letters. George Sand was one of the best paid writers of her time. She was privileged, but still made the underdogs her novel heroes. She was far ahead of her time in her worldview and in her independence. She left the world countless works and correspondences, and here we can see George Sand's one great life theme, the exuberant love she carried within her.